everybody, it's a rainy day as you can see. I came home from work early, thought I'd edit this video and finally get it out there. Well, those two squirrels were too close and too easy to resist. 2 shots, 2 kills, piece of cake. But it's not always been that way. Okay, so this video is basically, call it the evolution of my bow hunting. You'll see in a minute here some shots, mostly misses, and fuzzy pictures, not a crisp picture. Well, we've learned a lot about the camera to use. I got this bow shooting at 57 pounds, still a little more than I want. You'll see the painted arrows, and of course the small game heads. Now, every time I pull this little trigger, pretty good chance of squirrels coming down.
So over the last year, I've spent most of my time hunting and filming with the air rifle, and of course with this, the air gun, the FX Verminator Extreme with the crossbow bolts, and had a lot of fun, of course. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time to dial all these things in, paint those pellets and experiment and such. Spend a lot of time at the bench with the air rifle, and here, of course, the air gun. That's pretty close, but not close enough for these little targets. Got to keep working on it until it's just right. This kind of hunting is challenging enough, let alone trying to do it while filming. We've gone through a lot of gear, broken and lost, and learned a lot along the way. Now, I can't help myself, but every once in a while pull out the compound bow, take a broadhead off and put a small game head on it and take a crack at a squirrel up there in the tree. As you'll notice from this picture, that it's just not a real clear, crisp picture. What I'm doing here is just using the naked Casio camera that we use for the high speed. It's the same camera I've been using on all the other videos. The difference is it's not sitting behind the scope. Instead, we're using the camera itself to magnify, and as you can see, it just loses clarity. Now that shot is typical. So I'd satisfy the urge, put the bow back for another month or two until I took another whack at it. Here a miss, but look at that knock flying off. Well, one day not so long ago I decided to get serious about this. I took the bow to the range, did a lot of practicing, and then came out. Now my son was running the camera on this particular shot. 30 yards, 315 or so feet per second with the 70-pound draw weight bow. And you could say I caught the fever after this shot. Got my son and I pretty fired up. I thought you might get a kick out of this clip here. There's that squirrel we left for the pigs to grab. Yeah, again, if you haven't watched my videos, no squirrel goes to waste, whether it's converted to pork or whether we eat it.
Show that camera to the folks.
So I got serious about it. Went to the range to dial this bow in. There you're looking at an arrow that stuck that far into the tree, that far back into the woods after going through a straw bale. Needless to say, and this video proves it, that bow's shooting way too fast. Even though that small game head went through that squirrel, it still shattered the arrow and broke that illuminated knock. So, dialed it down, and as you can see at 57 pounds, bow is still putting these in there. That's a somewhat rotten log, but pretty solid. You can barely see the small game head sticking out there. Let's see what this bow can do. This shot, like that first one I showed you, might look like the arrow just bounces off. I assure you, these are all lethal shots. In the 30 or so that I've killed here in the recent month, only one got away where it died pretty soon thereafter. The small game head with enough speed is ridiculously lethal. This shot is a great example. The hemorrhaging that's caused by this head, it causes this squirrel to bleed out really quick. So in an attempt to get a clearer picture, we use this high definition setting, and as you can see, the picture is great, but watch the slow-mo. The frames per second are nowhere near adequate. And that was the only time we used that setting. Despite the fuzzy clarity, still some pretty fun shots to watch. Check this out. So we went ahead and had the idea to put the camera back behind the scope, use it as a scope cam, and that was working great. Mix in some small game heads, and we are ready to squirrel hunt and film. Sit tight because we have some results to show you. Alright, so we do the filming and shooting in one of two ways. Here I'm out in the woods, kind of a stock situation. You can't see right in front of me is a little bit of a material and brush to conceal me. This is a great spot out in our woods, and it illustrates how I film and hunt at the same time. Alright, so it's about 45, maybe 50 degrees here. About 4 p.m. I expect the squirrels to get active pretty soon. Got the camera ready to go. I can twist it, turn it, and then push one button and go. And then draw. This is my favorite. My son running the camera. He's 7 years old, but awesome at acquiring the target, hitting the record button, and steadying the camera while I take the shot. We're stepped outside of the blind so that I can film this, but he's sitting on top of our little blind. Notice after the shot how he turns the camera off quickly. That's because I've trained him to save battery power. As you can see, we have our clarity issues worked out. You'll also notice the painted arrow shaft. That and some other colors we experimented with are incredible at helping us find arrows in the woods. I'd say it's time for me to stop talking and you to start seeing some shots. Here we go. Okay, so here's a little test for you. See if you can tell what's different about this shot. And I'm not referring to the clarity. Watch the arrow. And I'll give you a little hint. Watch the pine tree branch behind the squirrel. Okay, what's different about this shot is, unlike the other ones that you've seen where the arrow either bounces off of or sticks in the squirrel, this one passed through effortlessly. I was using this tip, judo point, and it's essentially a field point with a couple little wires sticking out. Well, that's where that arrow was, bloody all over, 70 yards back in the woods after going all the way through that squirrel. That squirrel died instantly, by the way, bled out from the back side of it. The reason I'm shooting that judo point and these other tips you see here is because that center arrow, the yellow one with the small game head, was the last small game head I had. So while I was waiting for new ones to arrive, I took these shots, including this shot with this tip. As you'll see, this too passes through the squirrel pretty easily. Thanks to the painted arrow shafts, I was able to find these. Well, as I was waiting for more small game heads to arrive in the mail, I've taken these shots, including this beauty. Now this arrow also passed through. There I found it way back in the woods, thanks to the yellow shaft. Let me tell you a little bit about this shot. I saw this squirrel after taking another shot. I brought the camera up. He's about 30 feet up in the air. It's about a 20-yard shot. Squeezed the trigger, heard the perfect sound, and heard a beep. Looking down to my camera, I saw this message. So I quickly rewound, hoping that I would find the kill shot on film, and it must have cut off just a second before. The shot was awesome, so I was really disappointed. I found out the card was only a 2-gigger. Put it back in the camera, deleted a couple of shots I didn't need, and I saw a squirrel coming down this down log. And then this chipmunk popped up there. So I moved the camera over, waited for it to come out from behind the tree, and then I took my shot. And I no longer was bummed out about missing that one from before. Okay, get ready. There's still a picture of that chipmunk's coming up, and it's gruesome. What, can you believe what that tip did? Allow me to prove how anxious I was to get my new small game heads. I realized that I had one stuck up in a tree. All I needed to do was go through the effort to get that down, and I'd have another one to tide me over until my new ones arrived. No problem, right? Just climb up there and grab it. That ladder, by the way, 32 feet. Just the ladder itself. Hey there, I say. Thought I'd film this, my climbing gear, so I can keep shooting my bow. Here I am getting geared up. My wife shaking her head, running the camera. There I am halfway up. I noticed another arrow that I lost earlier, another pass through from a non-small game head. There's my wife. She brought me an extra tree step, which I pulled up the rope, and there I am close to the top. And last but not least, here's a little shot of my neighbor's yard from the treetop view. My new small game heads finally arrived. Hey, sorry guys, this video is 17 minutes long, and I learned the hard way that YouTube only takes 15 minutes. So I'll cut it off right now. Please go to the video description on this one to find a link to part 2, or go to my channel and watch part 2. You'll love it. Thanks.